Hi, everybody. My name is Zenka Caro. I'm founder of LightNet, and we're here today with Mark Anthony. He is part of our contact lab. In other words, how we're making contact. How does this actually work? We're going to talk about the science behind the pineal gland, about the brain, and how this actually works. Now, hi, everybody. My name is Zenka Caro. I'm founder of LightNet, and we're here today with Mark Anthony. He is part of our contact lab. In other words, how we're making. Wow, we had another voice in the mix here. I forgot to mute one of our channels. So we are going to be hearing, at least Mark is going to be hearing, perhaps not today, but he has done 15,000 interviews where he hears the other side. That's right. He closes the connection, makes that healing happen for people that haven't had that final last conversation. He also works in the courtroom and out. He's an Oxford educated lawyer capable of delivering work in the Supreme Court, but he has decided to bring that evidential mind of his, that brilliant mind of his, into what has become a fourth generation occupation within his family. So at 3.5 years old, he had his first contact, but later in his life, he decided that this was his path. And we're so grateful for him in this field because the world is ready. And along with his 4 books that he's come out with, and his touring and his international assistance in solving crimes and bringing things back together, he's really a face where we can bring consciousness and science together. It's a true honor to have him, and also Rocky here today. Hello, both of you. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Zach. Thank you for having me on. And for everyone who doesn't know Rocky, she's my business manager and travels with me throughout the country. So, Rocky, thanks for being here this morning.
Yes, I'm Mark's a business manager and producer, and I will be happy to give Mark's website. And it's afterlifefrequency.com if you want to have contact with Mark and attend any of his events. But I'll let Zinka take it away. And Mark has 3 books, and he is a writer for Best Holistic Life magazine, which he writes on a monthly basis with close to 2.5 million subscribers. And I'm going to brag on him just 1 second. He was just notified by all of the subscribers as the Visionary of the Year.
That is so incredible. Thanks for coming on, Rocky, to tell us a little about his awards. He's also going to be starting a tour soon. So he's going to be heading to Texas and also Sedona for the Sedona Ascension Retreat. And Suzanne Ross is putting together another incredible year. We've got Daryl Anka. We've got incredible speakers coming. And Mark does not only a talk on Déjà Vu, but he also gathers a group of people where he does a group reading. And I was in the room last time and people's lives changed. I can tell you that right now. So thank you, Rocky, for all that you do to get Mark's message out. You know, they really are, like I said, hitting a stride. You know, on Wednesday, you're going to be talking with Suzanne Ross on your show, right? The Psychic and the Doc. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'll let Mark, would you like to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, first off, for everyone who doesn't know Suzanne Ross, she is an amazing person, and she is the founder and the organizer of the Sedona Ascension Retreats. And I'm very honored that she asked me to be a keynote speaker at the 10th anniversary celebration of the Sedona Ascension Retreats in March. And if people want to find out about that and get a 10% discount on their tickets, please go to my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com. Go to the calendar of events, and you'll get the code Psychic Explorer will qualify you for 10% discount on tickets. And the Sedona Ascension Retreats, it's really amazing because the talk I'll be giving is reincarnation. Who were you before you were you? and it will involve deja vu, but I'll also be conducting light circle spirit communication events, which Zenka was talking about. And light circles are limited to 6 people. That way I make sure everybody gets a connection with their loved ones in spirit. I've also got 2 light circles coming up online, February 14th and 15th. And Rocky and we decided to do this on Valentine's Day. Why? Because broken hearts don't have to last forever. And when you lose a loved one, it breaks your heart. And it takes the edge off the pain to touch base with them in spirit. And that's what I do. I've devoted my life to communicating with spirits. Zenka, I want to bring up one thing. You said I have 4 books. Actually, it's funny to know that you said that, because just this weekend, Rocky and I were talking about, I'm in the initial planning phases of writing my 4th book. So Zenka, because you're around all these psychics and you live in Sedona, I think you've absorbed some of the mojo.
It's so interesting because that was like a clink in my mind. I was like, no, because my mind was like, no, it's 3. There's like, so interesting. Well, what are you dying to write about, Mark?
I always like writing about, and that's what we're going to talk about today, the spirit communication and the science behind it, because I work a lot with researchers and scientists. I've been studied in the UK. I've been studied in a couple different locations in the United States. I mean, they've hooked up all these electrodes to my head. I've had positronic emission tomography, CAT scans, EEGs, which are electroencephalograms, and QEEG, quantitative electroencephalograms, to measure the brainwave frequencies going on with me during spirit communication. So it's been very fascinating. Plus, I've also been part of studies where the researchers will have me do a reading on somebody that of course I don't know, and know nothing, know absolutely nothing about. And then I bring through spirits associated with those people, and the researchers test the accuracy on that. And I'm very, very humbled and very honored that I come in around 90+% on the accuracy. And it's very, very fascinating to be part of all of this. Spirit communication, Zenka, is a gift. And I believe it's a gift from God. And I don't go around like, I have a gift from God. We're all capable of experiencing spirit communication to varying degrees. It's just that some people are better at it than others. It's like some people are better athletes. Some people are better mathematicians. Some people are better artists. We all have, things that we're good at. And this happens to be part of the skill set that I was born with.
I am so fascinated by the brain studies, and also the fact, I was given a crystal kit by a crystallographer who was studying crystallography at, I think it was Quantum University. And she told me the same thing. She's like, there's crystals in your pineal gland. And I said, what? And
Yes.
she said, yes. And she's like, when you describe how this actually works, you guys, this is an actual, this is not, this is something that we can finally grasp.
It
So,
is.
and you are explaining that it is like a radio. And there is a time where the spirit on the other side can say, okay, I've got this, I've got the radio connection. So talk about the brain, because how funny, when you were a lawyer, you studied, you specialized in brain. I mean, you can't make this up. Your gift is really coming through.
When I was practicing law full time, and I've left the practice of law to concentrate solely on my spiritual work. And I had been a prosecutor, then I was a criminal defense attorney, and then a civil litigator in injury cases. And my practice, I seemed to I was directed, if you will, into head injury. So I had to study the human brain, and I was working with neurobiologists, neuroscientists, and studying the brain. And then when I left the practice of law, and that's a funny story, or an interesting story, that I can tell later on if we have time. But when I started working with mediumship, I began to see a connection between everything I'd learned about anatomy and physiology and the workings of the human brain and how mediumship occurs. And I love the way you were talking about how your friend had crystals, and she said that gave you crystals, and she said, oh, the brain has crystals in it. Inside of the brain, right behind the center of our forehead, that's the proverbial third eye chakra. And if anyone's tuned in to this program, and for those who don't, people that do yoga, the third eye chakra is the center of the forehead. There are 7 main chakras in our body. And what's fascinating is the Hindus in ancient India 5,000 years ago identified them. The 5 chakras coincide, their location coincides with the location, the 7 chakras with the 7 endocrine glands in our body. But the third eye chakra, if you go about 4.5 inches behind the center of your forehead, there's the pineal gland. The pineal gland, it's between the size of a grain of rice and a small lima bean. It's the most mysterious, one of the most studied, and perhaps the least understood of the organs in our body. Recent discoveries within the past, I'll say 20 years, in Britain, Israel, France, and Germany, have identified calcite and magnetite crystals inside of the pineal gland. And both calcite and magnetite, they have what's known as piezoelectric properties. What does that mean? Piezoelectric properties mean when pressure is exerted on the crystal, it generates an electrical field. Whoa. What was the first radio? It was a piece of quartz crystal with copper wire that ran low levels of electricity into it. Now, we have something much more sophisticated than that, but based on the same principle in our head. Well, the pineal gland not only has calcite and magnetite crystals, it governs our circadian rhythms. When we're hungry, when we're tired, when we're sleepy, when we're awake. It secretes the hormone melatonin. It governs our perception of light, which is going to be very important to our discussion today. And it regulates our brainwave frequencies. Okay. The study of neuroscience, the study of the human brain, has indicated that there are 5 main brainwave frequencies. There's gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta. Gamma, that's like when you're on Final Jeopardy and your brain's cranking at full speed and you're doing a calculus exam. All right, that is when you are running your brain at full throttle. Beta, those are the activities of daily living. You can get up, tie your shoes, put on your clothes, balance your checkbook, drive to work. Alpha is where you start to relax. I always joke and call it the groovy baby state. So for all of our listeners in Southern California, sorry about the fires, and our thoughts and prayers and support go out to you. But all joking aside, the alpha state is where you begin to drift into the theta state, which is dream, restful sleep in the dream state. Delta, very little brainwave activity, but Delta has been kind of poo-pooed in the past as well. There's nothing going on, except that's when your body heals. In other words, energy is being diverted for cellular regeneration and healing, fighting infection. But it's at the alpha theta border. And these brainwave frequencies can all be measured, and around 8 hertz, which is a kind of a lower, calm, sound if in music, but it's around 8 hertz is the alpha theta border, and this is where psychic and mediumistic activity occur. So when your brain goes into the alpha theta border around 8 hertz, spirits can see this or perceive it the way they do, and they alter their frequency to where you get a frequency match. Here's what's so fascinating about the Zenka is normally it takes time when people go to sleep, sometimes several hours, to get to the alpha theta border. What we don't understand, and by we I mean those of us who study spirit communication as a science, is how people like me can go from the beta state to alpha theta voluntarily and within seconds. So the theory is there may be something a little bit different about our pineal gland. Who knows? Maybe I have an extra calcite or magnetite fragment, but it does appear to be genetic. In my family, certainly, both my parents had these abilities, and it goes back 4 generations, probably further. But we can identify the people with these abilities back into the 1890s, and so spirit communication isn't hocus pocus or magic. Everybody's capable of it because we have the same basic physiology. It's like saying, I can play guitar, but I'm never going to be a Keith Urban or a Brad Paisley or an Eric Clapton. I can swim. I'm never going to be a Michael Phelps, but I can still do those activities. So everybody can engage in these. And it is based on science. It's based on frequency, and it is based on human physiology, and it does not exclude faith. It does not exclude faith, because the focus of my work is not only to make connections, facilitate connections for people in this world with their loved ones, but also to help bridge the divide between faith and science. So, and that's a rather concise explanation. My book, The Afterlife Frequency, goes into much greater detail.
Incredible, incredible. This, Schumann resonance is 7.83. So the Earth is actually resonating at close to 8. And that's so interesting that when we're one, and it's also the departure, it is the line between waking, between waking, and it's the jazz, everything's okay. In alpha, yeah, you're right. It's the oneness. It's the I'm not scared. It's the I'm connected. And then the theta is yeah, it's our imagination. It's where we create from. And
Yes.
how interesting. So does do do the spirits have a hard time staying with you at that moment? Do they ever get tired? Or someone was saying she was doing mediumship, and she said sometimes they'll start repeating what they're saying because that's it, that's what they wanted to say. But I don't know, is it
Well,
hard for them to connect?
no. You got to realize that let me back up before we talk about spirits. Let me explain my electromagnetic soul theory. All right, so we just went through the brainwave frequencies. Every faith, every great belief system since the sages of ancient India 5,000 years ago, the Egyptians believed this. Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Native American religions. I mean, all the face of the world teach us that the soul, the who and what we are, the consciousness, pre-exists the body, comes into the body, and then when the body no longer functions, in other words, physical death, we move on. The question is, do we move on? And latest scientific studies indicate, oh, yes, we do, and that the brain is like a computer hard drive. In other words, it did not create your soul, it merely hosts it the same way that your computer hard drive hosts the programs that are on it. So if you have a cell phone or a laptop or a desktop, these devices did not create the data on it, they merely host it. And so when the brain/hard drive crashes, in other words, when we die, that information gets uploaded. Based on years of research, I developed the term the electromagnetic soul. Now, where did that come from? Everything's made of molecules. We know this from science, which in turn are made of atoms, which in turn are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons, which in turn are made of the smallest particle of pure electromagnetic energy known as a quantum. And that's where the term quantum physics comes from. And it's also, we think of biology, the science of living, organisms, and physical science as being different. Well, on the subatomic level, they're not. So everything, you, me, the air we're breathing, the light we're seeing, the radio waves this program's being broadcast on, the rings of Saturn and beyond in our physical universe are all made at the same subatomic level of electromagnetic energy quantum. And it's funny, Zenka, because people tell me, well, that's really hard to wrap my head around. You think? I mean, it did take like Albert Einstein, um, Robert Oppenheimer, Max Planck, Niels Bohr, Louis de Broglie, Werner Heisenberg. It did take guys and women. Mileva Einstein, his wife, was right there with him to figure this out. Okay. So if you're having a hard time wrapping your head around it, hey, that's okay. I mean, it took the world's greatest geniuses to figure out that everything on the subatomic level is made of pure electromagnetic energy. So combining years of research with quantum physics, anatomy, physiology, and faith, I developed the term the electromagnetic soul, the EMS, to describe in 21st century terms what we really are, which is not these bodies, it's pure consciousness, which is eternal electromagnetic energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. Every faith teaches us the soul pre-exists the body, comes into the body, moves on after the body dies. Now, problem when you ask a lawyer what time it is, we tell you how to build a clock, which I just did. But going back to your earlier question, do spirits get tired in spirit communication? The answer, based on my experience and observations and studies, no. We're the ones that get tired, because to maintain that alpha beta frequency and the amount of energy, focus, and attention it requires to for the human brain, okay, which didn't create the soul, but it is the formatting apparatus to maintain that amount of energy. We're the ones that get tired. Spirits are aware of that. That's why they would repeat things like, hey, you're not getting this. They know when we're running out of juice. I can tell toward the end of a reading when the spirits are like, okay, he's done his best, but now it's time to leave. And it normally takes about an hour 15, hour 20, maybe, where you can maintain that amount of energy. It's like asking a marathon runner, well, you just ran 26 miles. Can you run another 10? So we all have our physical limitations. Remember, spirits are pure electromagnetic energy. Energy is eternal. Energy doesn't get old, sick, tired, or die. But we do.
Fascinating, fascinating. You really, you explain how this works on such a detailed level that you're in your books, which I encourage everyone to read, because this is, like you said, you're condensing all the information of all the sages, all the wisdom traditions, all the religions, plus now we can put electrodes on our head. We do know what brain state we're in. We do know what quarks are. We have the fundamentals to understand this. And in your books, you even talk about light, and how how does a message, when you hit your foot, how does it go to your brain, and how do these light particles basically pass information? So this is really exciting. We're going to get into some other topics now. We're going to talk about deja vu. We're going to talk about spirit communication. And for those of you who are listening, we're also going to talk about how to do what Mark does. It's a practice, it's a muscle. And we're going to talk about his raft technique of different ways that you can start to dip your toes in this, right? So do you want to touch on the science of the light before we touch on some other things? Do you want to shed a little
that's
on that?
Sure.
Because we talk about light. I mean, when I first got into this, I'm thinking like people are talking about light bodies and everything. I was just like, no, this is too woo-woo. Like this, this doesn't sound right. This sounds like an artist came up with it. But there is a basis for all of this.
Right. Ever step on a tack, or for parents, a Lego? Okay. Immediately you feel the pain. Now, your brain is the control system for the body. How does it get there so fast? Well, our neural network, our nervous system operates at the speed of light. And we hear from every religion, God's described in terms of light. Moses with the burning bush, Jesus talked about the light, Buddha talked about the light. Krishna, the light that has lighted the world. We hear about the divine described in terms of light. Well, in the past century, it's been discovered that our cells, our individual cells, produce light, flashes of light. And these are called ultra-weak photonic emissions, and the cooler term is biophotons. Now, this is not bioluminescence like you see with a firefly or certain types of fish or mushrooms that glow at night. This is invisible to the human eye. So it takes an electron microscope to see these flashes of light. And so MIT, back in 2012, so this is not brand new stuff. This is accepted in the scientific community, is that our cells communicate through flashes of light, kind of like a computer does in a binary system. So when you step on the Lego and you feel it right away, it's because your nervous system, the flashes of light are in your foot are saying, ouch, and that ouch gets transmitted at the speed of light, which is 186,282 miles per second, or 394,000 kilometers per second. Okay, so this is pretty darn fast, all right? And so it's not just humans that have biophotons. Rocky and I were in the redwood forest, the Muir Redwood Forest in San Rafael, and we're walking in this area that they call the sanctuary or the cathedral. And when you're there, you'll see why. It's just this very spiritual place. And all of a sudden, I heard the trees talk to me. Now, talking to dead people is weird enough, but now trees are talking to me. And all of a sudden, I take a step back, and Rocky's about 30, 40 feet away. And she goes, Mark, this is weird, but I could swear that tree talked to me. And I'm like, it happened to you too. And then while we're talking about this park ranger, he was a volunteer. This guy had to be about 80. He was like this really cool, remember the grandpa on the Waltons, that old show, the grandpa was like the coolest, woodsy kind of guy. He reminded us of that. He comes walking up and he looks at us and he goes, they talked to you, didn't they? And we go, what? He goes, I can always tell from the look on people's faces. He goes, when you're around these trees enough, they are able to communicate. Then he and I got into a discussion, and this has been proven, and even astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about this. The roots of trees, including redwoods, at the tips of the roots, there's the mycelium fungus. And the mycelium fungus and the roots of the trees have biophotons. So it's not just warm-blooded animals. Other species, other animals, reptiles, mammals, and plants have biophotons. The mycelium fungus has a symbiotic relationship. In other words, it's a beneficial relationship. And through biophotons, they direct the roots of the trees to water and nutrients, and even to communicate with other species of trees. It's also been seen that when a tree is cut, so you have a stump there, the stump can live because the roots of other trees reach out to it and start directing its roots to nutrients. Whoa! So what we have going on here is a form of communication. And the cells that these roots have are very similar to the cells in our eyes. And so when you start looking at how we're all interconnected energetically, that's amazing. All right, so back to human beings. So on the cellular level, our cells produce the same form of light that we see from the sun. And when people have near-death experiences, which is, and I'm very honored, in August, I will be a keynote speaker at the 50th anniversary conference, the 50th anniversary of the founding of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And once again, through my calendar of events, you can find out about getting tickets there. And I'm going to be talking about near-death experiences, illuminating an ancient mystery. And I take us all back in time, and I'm not going to give away any spoiler alerts on that one. But basically, People in near-death experiences talk about going through a tunnel into what? The light, where they see light beings, which you talked about, which oftentimes are deceased relatives and, dare I say, the divine power we call God. And it's really fascinating to think that from the subatomic in our cells to the cosmic, which is the divine, we're light beings. Albert Einstein said, matter is energy, energy is light, we are all light beings. And now biophotons indicates Einstein once again was correct, and that our body is a matrix of light as our cells use light to communicate. So once again, that in a nutshell is some of the things that I'll be talking about on various tours this year.
It's so incredible because I love how you've studied the science. So just like a physicist could understand, okay, this is how it works, but then 15,000 readings later, you're actually experiencing it. And you and Rocky walking by the tree, all these, this is applied research, this is applied science. And you're had a very unusual life to basically bring all this information together in one place. It's absolutely incredible. So yes, and for those that you would like to hear Mark, again, he's getting pulled in the doctors, and he's doing a weekly show that you can hear. The Sedona Ascension Retreats.com is there, and Mark Anthony's website is Afterlife Frequency. So I have a very rudimentary understanding of what I've been told over the years. And I'm just going to put it out there, and then you can dispel everything, because as I learn more, I realize that everything's sort of unlimited. So, but my question is this, like, this is my rudimentary little picture I have in my mind, is that, people cross over. Some people that have had a violent death or whatever get kind of stuck in a loop, and they need help being released from something. So I don't understand that part. And then what happens when those souls go higher and often doing other things? And if they're often doing other things and elevating and progressing, can you still call them? Or at some point, are they off doing other, so you can always call someone. If you have a desire in your heart to make contact with X, they will be available.
Yeah, they will. See, we tend to classify things on the basis of what we understand. And we're born, we age, and then we physically die. So we think time is linear. In other words, that it moves in one direction. Also, everything that we know has a boundary, has a limit. In other words, our brain is designed strictly for finite perception. The idea of infinity, always was, always will be, going on forever, we really cannot, when you try it, it'll drive you to distraction when you try to actually grasp that. And there's a dichotomy with our electromagnetic soul, which is an eternal being, which is temporarily housed in the brain, which has finite perception. So that when we physically die, think of your EMS, your electromagnetic soul, as a drop of water, and it leaves the brain and it plunges into the eternal sea of consciousness that I call the collective consciousness. In other words, you're going to the other side. Now, sometimes that drop bounces back, and that's a near-death experience, but we can talk about that later. But when you leave your body and you go into this higher vibrational frequency, you're still an individual. So when you die, you take you with you, okay? You're still you. And now you're energetically linked with other spirits that are linked with other spirits. And during spirit communication, it's not so much, I call it the collective consciousness disconnect. I mean, and that's just a way of describing it. You're never disconnected. And you and I are part of the collective consciousness too. because our EMS, its vibrational frequency is patched into this. That's why people will have psychic dreams where something comes to pass. They dream about something that then happens later. So what happens here is when you're grieving somebody that you really love, you're sending out an electronic frequency. Think of it like a spider web. I call this a frequency beacon. How does a spider web work? Vibration. Here we'll get back to vibration and frequency. So you're sending that out, a spirit picks up on it, and it draws them to you. Conversely, they will send you signs. They will, like you'll say, gee, ever since mom died, I keep noticing dimes heads up. Or every time I look at the clock, it's the day it's mom's birthday on the clock. Do you think that's a coincidence? And spirits, because they move at the speed of light, and in the time it's taking me to say this sentence, a spirit could have been back and forth to the moon 17 times. That is how fast they move. So when people are like, well, can they come to us? Yes, they can, and there's no expiration date on spirit communication. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, very interesting, because you're right. When people are in that theta alpha thing, that's where they write their novel, come up with their scientific discovery. They are tapping into that collective consciousness. So in a sense, you could contact yourself, right, Mark? Like, in the sense that yourself is a gradation toward a collective consciousness.
Yeah, that's what you're doing is, we are multi-dimensional beings. And I know in the metaphysical field, people like to fling around the word quantum because it's cool, and multi-dimensional because it sounds neat. What does multi-dimensional mean? In a universe, there are different dimensions, different frequencies. Think of our world as AM radio, as energy, frequency, vibration, okay? Because everything, from this pen to the light of the sun on the subatomic level is made of the same form of electromagnetic energy, but everything vibrates at different frequencies. That's why we consider the pen to be inanimate, in other words, not living, in our bodies as animate. And so when we are in that receptive phase, our electromagnetic soul is interfacing with the EM frequencies of other spirits around us. Take auras, okay? Behind me, all right, you see there's an aura around the break front because I got a light behind there. Anything that has an energy source has an aura. We can all see auras. It's an outline around people, and it's not an after image. Like if you stare at somebody and they're standing in front of a white background, then they step in front of the black, there's an after image. So you got to be careful. But auras are an energy field around us. And people say, oh, that's that new age hocus pocus. No, it isn't. We have biophotons. We have an electromagnetic field. Well, do you think that energy field is stagnant? Well, heck no, because that's how it's interfacing with other energies. On the subatomic level, on the quantum level, it has been theorized that time does not exist. So why is it that some people have dreams where they dream about something that happens later on? Why are some people who are very gifted psychically are able to pick up and discern future events? Why in readings, when spirits come through, they may bring a piece of information that doesn't initially make sense, but then it comes to pass? Why? Because on the subatomic electromagnetic level, there is no time, which is why when you get into that zone, you may be able to pick up on future events. So there's a scientific explanation for this. It isn't hocus pocus or magic. I did, if I may digress for a moment, I was on the TV show The Doctors back in 2017, and they had me do a reading for the family of this amazing young woman who was brutally murdered, and the case had gone cold. And I did the reading, and I'm only giving a couple snippets here because it would take more than this entire show to go through everything. And her spirit came through, and basically she said, the police are missing something, and they need to broaden the parameters of the DNA testing. And when they do that, they will find the killer, but he'll already be behind bars on a different charge because he screwed up. And then she gave, she gave me that information, and there was a lot more. I just got to be measured with what I say. Long story short, the family went back to Arizona. They talked to the police, and then the police used the familial DNA test, because at the scene of her murder, there was DNA samples that they got from the suspected killer. And what the familial DNA test does is it broadens the parameters of the DNA test to look for people who could be close relatives. So it doesn't look for a 100% match, looks for like a 98% match. Immediately, they found a guy that was in jail, and it appeared that he was the brother or a very close relative of the killer. So then the police located this guy in jail. They located his brother, who happened to have recently been arrested on a drunk driving, like his fourth DUI charge. They got a search warrant for his blood 100% match. So they broadened the parameters of the DNA test. Now, this was the first time the state of Arizona had ever used the familial DNA test. It was in this case. And the reason I'm not giving names and more, because there's a lot more I can talk about, is this guy is still awaiting trial. In fact, his attorneys challenged the familial DNA test, went all the way up to the Arizona Supreme Court. They said, nope, familial DNA test checks out scientifically, so it came back down, so he's still awaiting trial. Now, at the time of the reading, the familial DNA test, him being arrested on all these other charges, had not yet happened. So her spirit was able to see future events and tell us about that. Now, people say, well, that's a coincidence. Really? I mean, come on. One of my favorite, I was doing a reading for this woman, and her mom's spirit came through and said, take your nephew to the eye doctor. And she said, that's interesting. She goes, I have a nephew that I'm very close to, and he's been complaining about eye issues recently. And then the spirit started giving me the song Tutti Frutti All Rudy. And I'm hearing Tutti Frutti All Rudy. 2 weeks later, she contacts me and she goes, Mark, I called my sister and she said, yeah, he's been complaining headaches and I think he needs glasses. So she said, I went with my sister and her little boy to the eye doctor. And the second we walked into the doctor's office, on the radio, it started playing Tutti Frutti All Rudy by Little Richard. Now, it's a cool story, but let's look at what was going on there. Spirits are pure electromagnetic energy, right? Guess what radio waves are? Electromagnetic energy. Her spirit was able to patch into the EM field to say, this song's going to be playing, okay, at the precise moment they walked in, which was her way of letting them know that not only did you get my message, but you're doing the right thing and you're in the right place at the right time. And so once again, Zenka, none of this is hocus pocus. None of this is magic. It is all possible because of science and human physiology.
It's interesting because I'm having these aha moments here, and this is kind of the backbone of what LightNet is all about. Is we say, okay, let's look at the most extreme things like spoon bending, levitation, apports, whatever, getting out of a wheelchair, and then we'll back that down into everything else. So what we learn about that, and this is everyone listening, listen to what he's saying, because what you're saying is true in your regular life.
Yes.
Right? You're emitting a frequency, right? When you're banging your head on the wall, it's because your antenna is not calling the right people to you. Just like you can call that spirit, just like it's a match, right? I want to know something from my grandmother, right? So that is where that's syncing up. And it's so cool that our lives are led. It's almost like walking through a dark ocean with a light. It's like you're illuminating what is going to be coming into you and to what you were focused on wanting to know. And there's no answer that the God particles or the particles of light, or however we can explain this, right, will not come to greet you with the answer, you know,
Yeah,
or with the next step or with the next thing. So, in other words, all information is available to you,
it
whether
is.
it's, you know, and so let's talk about this. You know, we have 15 more minutes. I want to talk a little bit about deja vu, and I want to talk about you guys starting your baby steps in making that communication, because there's some doubt that enters in the first phases, but once you get through that, you're on to smooth sailing. So let's wrap up the deja vu situation and go into the raft. But so if you can see the future, I guess that's not really related to deja vu, but
No, it is. It is exactly that. Because with deja vu, you get this been there, done that sensation. And that's once again, your EMS is able to tap into the quantum subatomic level and pick up past, present, and future events. So let's say, like Rocky has a great example. She walked into Alhambra in Spain, and all of a sudden she knew where everything was. She knew the layout of the place. She'd never been there before, and she had this deja vu. And she was a teenager when she did this. So, and there was a dress of a princess that was there that was her size, and she tried it on, and she goes, "This was my dress." And of course, the docents were freaking out, and Rocky would never do anything harmful to the dress. But the thing is, how did that happen? How do people who have recollections of memories of places and people they've never met? How, if you're doing something, is like, wait, I felt like I've done this before. So it's the same mechanism. See, my electromagnetic soul theory explains all forms of spirit communication. It provides the basis for spirit contact, the existence of the afterlife, near-death experiences, deathbed visions, out-of-body experiences, deja vu, all of it. And that's why so many scientists are saying, well, you know, and it's very, you know, it's such an honor when I have scientists telling me your observations and theories coincide with our discoveries and research. So that's how the deja vu works. It's the same energy, it's the same apparatus. It's just picking up on some past events and sometimes future events. You know, like you could be somewhere and it's like, you're going to reach a doorknob. It's like, wait a second, I saw this in a dream the other night. You know, usually in horror movies, it's like, deja vu. But yeah, it was just making me think of I remember I love Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and I like her movie. And she was doing that. She was going to open a door and she looks at the camera and goes, deja vu, you know, because something scary was going to happen. And it's cool to make, you know, make humorous anecdotes out of that, but it happens to all of us. And I know you want to talk about my raft technique. The afterlife frequency teaches you how to recognize, accept, feel, and trust, RAFT, messages from spirits, and signs from spirits. We can all recognize them, like you get the deja vu sensation. You have to accept it as real. It's the third step, feeling without overthinking. Oh, this is a coincidence. Oh, it's my imagination. And that's where people tend to no, and hyperanalyze it away, and boom, then you're going to kill the experience. But when you get into the habit of feeling without overthinking, then you get to trusting the message. And so I give exercises for how to implement the raft technique. And for everybody, I do one-on-one readings. I do them by the phone or by Skype. And you can find out about that at afterlifefrequency.com. Coming up on February 14th and 15th, have an online light circle limited to 6 people. And let me tell you, the synergistic benefits of a light circle cannot be underestimated. I mean, Zenka, I mean, she's observed that. I write for Best Holistic Life magazine. In the January article, 2025, I write about a light circle where there were 6 parents, all who'd lost children, come together. And then what happens during that reading was astonishing, because there was no way this was a coincidence, because 2 parents who had never met, it would take too long to explain, but when we all walked out of there, everybody was like, we were supposed to be here. Who knew? Who knew? So, and of course, I'm going to be seeing Zenka at the Sedona Ascension Retreat. Looking forward to that in Houston in February, like 19th through the 22nd. I'll be at Body, Mind, and Soul of Houston. I'll be on Great Day Houston, and you can get free tickets to be part of the audience. I'll be doing some readings. And then you can also get tickets at Body, Mind, and Soul, where I'll be doing 2 evenings of spirit communication. So just go to the calendar of events on my website. You can see the light circles, and there you go. The Great Day Houston, the 20th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, and 24th, I'll be at Body, Mind, and Soul. And so everyone, I invite all of you to sign up for my website, go to my website and sign up for my newsletter, which is at afterlifefrequency.com. And please understand, in the one-on-one readings, even though it says readings are 60 minutes, we're going to be on the phone a bit longer than that, because I always start with an introduction, about 10, 12 minutes, to bring you up to speed on how spirits work with me and I work with them. And then when the reading's over, if you have questions about helping, about interpreting things or about spirit communication, I think it's part of the healing power of spirit communication. It is my honor to spend some time with you discussing all this. And you can find out about all of this at my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com. Zenka, I can't thank you enough. And I love the name LightNet. And that's what we're talking about in this whole show, is light. Beautiful name.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. Like I said, people are really craving your position in all of this grounded, well-respected, world-renowned, scientific. But it's also, at the end of the day, as much as we understand this, it's about that healing that we all go through so that we're creating the world we want. And sometimes having that last conversation is just like is so important. I have so many more questions for you. I can't wait to see you in person. We have toyed around with doing apports here in Sedona, and we've set up different trays that they can move objects and things like that. So if we have one final 3 minutes here, what is your I've done the radio technique as well, where I said, like, please, the first song that I hear today, let it be a message. And it always is. And it's like hilarious, right? But if they are on the other side, but able to work with the consciousness of what your perception is seeing, is it against the rules for them to move objects here or put songs on? Like, what?
No, not at all. And what people need to understand about spirit communication, spirits are not here to harm us or frighten us. It's a conversation with people you love who love you. And yes, and I'm going to be on an upcoming episode on a Discovery Channel show called Destinations of the Damned. And it has kind of a kind of a more ghost hunter feel to it. But I've encountered hundreds of thousands of spirits, and people say these are negative, and it's like, not necessarily. We may be encountering elementals, which are non-human spiritual intelligence that are aligned with nature. But when it comes to spirit communication with your loved ones, they're here to bring you messages of love, healing, resolution, and protection, which is why they may warn you about health conditions or whatever. They can move things. And in my book, The Afterlife Frequency, and never letting go, and evidence of eternity, I actually talk about where spirits literally pulled somebody out of the way of a car. Now, don't count on them to do that, okay? But they can move physical matter. They generally don't for various reasons. But to answer your question directly, Zenka, you bet they can.
So exciting. You know, I had to jump in because I have talked to a woman who was pushed out of the way of a car wreck. And she was like, it was so amazing. So, and she knows exactly how it worked, like with the spirit. So exciting, you guys. This is a world of miracles that we're all living in. And Mark Anthony has found his purpose and calling in life. And our Purpose Lab, though we do deal with the spoon bending, we also, you know, miracles happen when you live in your purpose and you follow your curiosity and your gifts and who you are and when you're truly yourself. So today at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, we're going to be releasing Mark Anthony's podcast where we interviewed him and 100 other people about how they found their purpose. So we just shared the link in the chat for you to check it out. You can go to Awaken Your Purpose on Apple Podcasts. You can also go to the holomovement.net/purpose. Go to the podcast. You can also see it at our LightNet YouTube, the interview, as well as Humanity's team, New Realities. Thanks to all our broadcast partners. Thanks to all the work you're doing in the world, Mark. You are a true inspiration, and you just really excite the possibilities I think that people have in their minds about what's possible and what's available to us. So thank you so much for
Thank you.